So good morning. Oops. Good morning, everyone. We've been working on a new draft of 703. It's just a draft at this point of some of the positions that we've talked about in committee, and we can post it as we go through it right now. If do you have a copy of it? Yep. Got it. So we can post that, and we're just going to do the next half hour, try and walk through and refresh our memories on the various sections, and then I think we're moving back to alcohol at 9 o'clock and sports betting.
So David, thank you for Rosa, for both you and Rosa's work on this. We're really grateful. This new draft of, if the public is following along, it's draft 2.1 of H703. This incorporates suggestions from the Senate Education, Senate Health and Welfare, and our committee, obviously, and a couple other people have weighed in. And so it, David, if you'd be kind enough just to sort of high level take us through it, I think and so if you go for the gusto, that would be great, because I know we have a limited time with you.
Sure. So good morning, David Hall, Legislative Council. Can you hear me okay?
We can, but you know, it would be great if Scott could raise the volume. We're just going to raise the volume a tiny bit.
I put the draft up on your screen. It's draft 2.1 of H703, and this is a Senate Economic Development Committee strike all amendment. I'm sorry I'm not with you in person. I just got to give it a little bit more time, but
we're glad you're healing.
So as Senator Clarkson indicated, this is the House passed version of 703 with Senate proposals embedded in highlights. Most of the things you'll see, I have worked on, some with Senate Education and some with work that you've done. I have not worked on the health and welfare pieces at all. So if you really want to dig into that stuff, you'll have to ask Jen to come and join you. But understanding we have about 23 minutes, I'll just try to, give you the big picture of the sections. So section 1 here, purpose and implementation. I think you've seen it really came from Senate Education. And the reason it's at the beginning and it's sort of all encompassing is that there was a great interest in that committee of ensuring that all of the workforce development monies that go out through this bill, whoever is managing those makes an effort to conduct outreach, to be in touch and make people aware of the opportunities in this bill. And in particular, you'll see in B, just significant outreach to ensure that all Vermonters, particularly populations that have experienced unequal access to public or private economic benefits due to different factors, have the opportunity to benefit from the bill. So it's really a purpose statement, but it does sort of apply across the board.
And underscores the need for sort of a voice speaking on behalf of workforce, a single voice that can market it.
Sure.
Right. Sorry.
So section 2, I don't believe so far there are any changes here.
Nope.
Section 3 is findings, so I'm going to skip over that, but it goes with the CTE funding and governance language. And that's section 3, which I'll get to. I'll say there has been a significant amount of flux in this proposal, and my understanding it is changing further on the House side, but this version, section 3, is the version that is supported by Senate Education. It's largely or wholly informed. The changes are wholly informed by proposals from the Agency of Education. And
They're the same, David, as were proposed in this committee actually before Ed got them. So we
Well,
are,
then you're probably all familiar. The real change here from the House version is to take the Joint Fiscal Office sort of out of the equation, and just run everything through AOE. And then, the agency has asked to sort of tighten up the scope to recognize that this is part of work that is continuing, that was actually already underway and interrupted by COVID, and they'd like to finish out. And it does focus on, CTE governance, management, implementation, accessibility, et cetera. So it is a directive to AOE to conduct this study and implementation plan, finally take action steps on what it's supposed to look like to change the CTE structure.
Yeah,
I just want to interrupt for 1 second, and to the extent anybody's listening in YouTube world, is we have not really had committee discussion on most of these sections. So no decisions have been made on any sections, whether they're in or out, or the amount of the money at this point. It's a work in progress to continue to familiarize ourselves with new ideas and what the House has done. But I know I've been victim of that in the past, and I wanted to, again, to the extent that anybody's listening, I want to be on the record.
Yeah, very important. This is a draft. And David, thank you for this. This is finishing. I think that we need to make clear in this section is this is finishing a study, a pilot that we began 4 years ago. I mean, this is the completion of this work.
And so
it had to stay at AOE.
And the agency did recommend a change in that respect to say, this is the continuation of work interrupted by COVID that is now being completed.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thanks.
So section 4, Unchanged. This is a grant for business coaching and other forms of training to BIPOC business owners, networking, convening across the state. 4A is new to the Senate side, and this is again recommended by the Committee on Education, Educator Workforce Development. So my understanding is this is work that is being done by the NEA now. It's basically to implement a peer review program that helps teachers who are already in the field receive mentoring, assistance, support to continue their education, to upskill, etc. It's a $712,000 appropriation to AOE, and it's called the Peer Review Support Grant Program. So
yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, this is a big question mark. We haven't discussed this at all. So
sure.
And it's gotten a big appropriation, just like the EMS one does. So these are big things to discuss.
And
sure.
I have a point on this one from your perspective, David, and also Senator Clarkson. Is there any rationale or preference as to why this whole section might be in this bill versus the yield bill? I mean, it's coming out of the education fund. I don't know if it's surplus or
I believe that's a key point. I think like other things in this bill, this is designed for the education or the yield bill. So the CTE, the 15 million or whatever you decide in finance, that is also in the yield bill, as I understand it. It's meant to be paid for out of. Well, it needs to be because those monies are designed to be yield bill money, one-time money. So we should talk about that, but maybe not while we have.
Right.
Yeah, but I have a big question. This is yield bill.
Okay. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, David, from your perspective, but I know that we've been talking about, and I've talked with Senator Campion as well. He said he could put it in the yield bill or he could put it here. I don't know if there's any. I mean, I like it here. This is all about upskilling, this whole bill, so it might be appropriate here. We're doing CTE stuff out of the education fund, or the House did in this bill. So, well, I mean, it may be that it can be anywhere, but I'm just asking you if you have any insight as to why, or if there's anything we should be aware of as to where we put it.
I don't. At this point in the session, I think you'll find that lots of proposals are ending up in multiple bills, to
Okay,
try to make sure they make it across the finish line somewhere.
So I would point out that section 16 is also yield bill. That's the CTE construction money. So, okay, thanks, David.
Sure. Incidentally, that CTE funding and governance study, the newest House version of that is an H or S, one of the 287s. So
It's in S11.
it's another one. It's another section that is in multiple places at this point.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm scrolling through section 5. We're down. We're at 8:45. I know you guys have looked at this one. This creates workforce innovation that I am appreciative to Rosa to helping me get this integrated at this point. I have tried to clean up the language a little bit, but frankly, I haven't had time to really dig into the words on this one. So, but I know that you're aware of it because you've been looking at it recently. So, but this is new to the Senate side, obviously. And then what is 5A in your amendment, which was the former 5 in the House, is the regional workforce expansion system. I know that there has been a lot of discussion about the scope of that, and I believe you've lowered the appropriation in that proposal from 1.5 to 1 million.
Right.
But so that's there. The changes, otherwise in this section are pretty narrow. It is a pilot.
was that section when it suggested to lower it from 1.5 to $1 million? I assume that had something to do with the $500,000 going to the innovator coordinator, but are we able to maintain what the House did in terms of increasing the positions with $500,000 less in section 5A?
I think that's a question that we have to discuss, and the number of regions in the pilot. It may be only on page 15 and only on line 14. The DOL may not be able to do 3, but maybe 2, and maybe positions. I think that's a piece of what we need to discuss.
Yeah, I can't tell you the ratio of dollars to people, but I know that even the House proposal is narrower than what the department had asked for, and it did result in them having to narrow the scope from a statewide to a regional system and reduce the number of people involved. So a further decrease in dollars, I have to assume, would result in a further narrowing of the scope. But that's ultimately a Sarah Buxton question on what they can do with the amount of money.
Yeah. Okay, that takes us to section
6, which is incarcerated individuals, and this is unchanged so far on the Senate side. The work here was done by corrections and institutions in the House, and just accepted in whole cloth by Commerce. So as it stands, that's still their work. I'm going to skip over that 8 and 9 are about basically recruitment and retention. 8 is about sort of DOC personnel. 9 was added by House Appropriations, I believe. Damien worked on this, but this is Human Services taking a look at psychiatric care resources, Department of Corrections, veterans resources, whether they're being effective in their recruitment strategies, how to do better. I'm not super familiar with those pieces. Gosh, I'm trying to hurry. We're only on section 11. So the work-based learning and training program, section 11, this is a DOL initiative. This really is sort of just replacing the internship and returnship pieces in statute. I don't know if you've heard from Sarah on this.
Yep, we have.
All right. But yeah, this is really internships, returnships, apprenticeships, the direction they're going there, and then a $1.5 million general fund appropriation for that. You guys asked me to remove section 13, the secondary student industry recognized credential pilot project. So that is stricken. Any questions on that one?
And I don't know who asked you to strike that, but anyway, we can chat about that later. I need to be reminded about that, but we will. I don't remember this piece, but that's okay. We'll remind ourselves about this.
All right.
Just not. I don't know if Ed did that or we did.
It was not education.
Okay. Okay. So question marks. Thanks.
Yep. So 14, the trade scholarship program is to help students. This runs through VSAC, and this is to help students with their tuition, initial licensing fees, exam fees to complete, trade certifications. I did change the words, so it's emergency services, energy, transportation, broadband, robotics. So emergency services, I believe, should take care of the things you had said, like EMS, firefighters, et cetera.
We still needed, I think, the energy industries and whether, but sorry.
Well, so I changed, it did say clean energy, clean transportation, and you'd asked me to just.
Yeah, and just throw just as energy and transportation now.
Yeah.
Great, perfect. I think that's what
Right.
Sarah asked us for. Sarah asked for this, and then firefighters and EMS are wanting to be included in this.
Sure.
And this does that with emergency services. Okay, great.
All right. So 14A EMS, this is the language that reflects the request from them for, I think it's $950,000 total.
Yeah, this is a lot of new money, and so this is one of our key things we have to discuss as we look at the money pieces.
All right. So that's 14. So 15 trades loan reimbursement program. I don't know if you've heard about this. I think you have. That's $500,000. So the CTE construction and rehab experiential learning program. This is the money from the Ed Fund to help CTE centers. So it's run through VHCB revolving loan fund. The version that's in your draft is basically what is proposed. It's proposed by Senate Education. So it really changes the focus to more.
Right. And I guess I thought I'd said don't include their draft because I'm not sure we're agreeing to all their new language and their emphasis on affordable housing because we were more focused on education. So we need to actually look at that pretty closely. But that is in the yield bill. The money for that is definitely yield bill. One-time money, just like the money for the upskilling in schools, the 712.
All right. So you can see, it's the House version, and then obviously the yellow is the Senate Education proposal. So you can see the scope of their changes. 17 is findings about early childhood education. And 18 is statement of intent. So 18A, the AHS employee education programs. This is the catalog of all their educational programs and opportunities. This was proposed to be added by Senate Education.
Okay, so this is new.
Yep. So the next huge block is all the health and welfare stuff. And again, Jen drafted this, so I am not familiar at this point with what changes Senate Health and Welfare is proposing.
So this is the section that the VSAC had also additional input on, and I sadly I directed Tom to you.
That's
And,
okay. So he's been in touch, and I connected him with Jen, and they're working together.
And yeah, okay, good.
So David, do you have a, even though I know you didn't draft this, you've done a side-by-side, I'm really interested in understanding where all of the pieces of funding related to nursing are hidden, not just in this, but also in budget adjustment. We had, Allison and I had Stephanie try to pull that together for us yesterday. No, I saw it.
It's not fully answering.
It's not fully answering. And it's just a concern I have, and I will just say right up front, my job as pro tem has pulled me out of this committee a lot in the last few weeks. So I understand there were conversations, decisions that might have been made that I wasn't here for. And so I will say, I get that. But I want to make sure that we're not putting in less money for nursing than the House is. This is a huge need. I know you guys have talked about it, but this is what I'm focused on, is that we shouldn't be, given the need right now and what we're hearing across the state around nursing. So I want to get a handle on that, and between David and Stephanie and Jen, if we can do that, so we can have a conversation about where all the money is hidden and what it's going towards, I would feel more comfortable being able to vote on this at some point.
Health and welfare, same amount of money, different places. So this amendment has the same amount of money, different places. However, this committee has talked about how do we pay for the other things, given the box Jane has given us of $26.9 million for this entire bill. So we have talked about other pieces of healthcare that might be paid for out of some of these pieces that are higher or lower priority. So just so you know that is.
No, and I understand that. I think one of the things that in my position as pro tem have heard as the speaker and I have traveled around the state is that the linchpin of all of this is what we are paying for nurses right now because of the travelers. We are hemorrhaging money because of that. So I know you know that, but I think it is a point of connection on this that cannot be overstated.
And we have actually made, really encouraged all the language to not, and on loan repayment and everything else to not be available to people who have been chosen to become travelers.
Yeah. I think that's critical.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think when we looked at that section, it was very important what the money is going for and what the commitment is of other players in the system.
Yeah.
And we didn't just sort of cut money from there.
No, I understood.
EMS, as you know, in your area is a huge issue as well.
Yeah.
And there was one section around nursing that I think we were really struggling with. I will only speak for myself. I was really struggling with.
We were.
Yes, around money going to the hospital, not specifically directed to nurses.
Preceptors or
Preceptors, yeah. And it, the reality is some hospitals are compensating their preceptors more.
Yeah.
The nurses at UGM Medical have been asking for this in their bargaining for years. And that we would use that money to pay a hospital. The language wasn't even clear, like this money goes straight to the preceptor through an educational program, but it goes to the hospitals. It's larger than this.
Yeah.
It's a tiny drop in the bucket, $1 million spread out over all hospitals. It's not going to do very much. It's one time. The only way I could support that is if anyone who took that money was going to make a strategic change to start paying their nurse educators a differential. But really, otherwise, it was just a give me for the hospitals, and some are doing it and some are not. So it's kind of, we're rewarding those who haven't been compensating nurse educators. This is our teaching hospital. I've said this multiple times, I hope they're listening. But this is our teaching hospital.
Yes.
And they're not compensating nurse educators already, even though that's been requested over and over again. So I really struggled with just throwing $1 million at them. Whereas EMS, that covers a lot of new people,
Yeah.
out in the field that help make the lives of our medical staff in hospitals easier if they're able to do their job well, transporting people.
And I'll circle back around with Jenny and help them up here, just trying to understand how do we increase, right? We all know the bottleneck is in the training of nurses, right? And that we need more preceptors. We've been hearing this, so
We need more faculty. So they have actually boosted a bunch of that. So they have shifted it to actually the need that they feel is the bottleneck, which are the faculty, the nursing faculty. So I think what would be helpful would actually be to get a fiscal note on this as it is now and get a sense of exactly in each section where it is. And it's an 89-page bill. I'm happy to do that. Not sure I have the time to be able to do every one of them, but I might ask, I'm not sure if it's Graham or who in JFO I would ask, but I'm gonna send it off and ask.
okay. Thank you.
So where do we want to, well, can we try
David is turning into a pumpkin.
at 9, or did you have a few more minutes, David?
I mean, I gotta scoot momentarily. We're on page 73. I can try to finish this out.
Okay.
So section 37 has the most recent changes that Sarah Kenny requested on the loan forgiveness for
Head Start.
early education employees. There is also this additional request from them for $125,000 to basically do coordinated outreach and recruitment initiative to attract educators and caregivers to the field of early childhood education.
We hadn't agreed to that, but we just had talked about putting this language in. This is part of the Let's Grow Kids proposal?
Right, yep.
We haven't necessarily agreed to this. We need to discuss it.
Right. So the recovery centers, I did try to change this language as you had requested so that rather than a straight allocation that gets, sort of equitably distributed around, it can be up to, and then they may allocate to fund up to a 1/2 or.
It doesn't say up to, that's the one thing. We wanted it to be a minimum, but that's okay. We could, as we discuss it, we can change that. You got the gist of it.
Yeah, okay. And then they can use other amounts for, I said for stipends, for transportation, childcare, other costs to enable clients to work. I don't know if that's the right verbiage, but I think that's the sense of what you were going for.
More flexible spending, that had been a request.
So section 39, this credential of value proposal is, the two changes are to add DED and the SWDB to the work, to the report.
Thank you.
And let's see, serve, learn, and earn. I added some more schema here to talk about, their participants, their service weeks, the organizations, the 4 that are actually involved, and then a report, interim and final reports on the program that I'd said would be a pilot. 41 is just finding still. 42 is the forest roadmap, so that's all unchanged.
Okay, and that may be, and then there are.
I don't think there's any other changes.
Those are the main changes, and then obviously there'll be changes in some of the stuff at the effective dates that may be depending on what we do.
Thank you, David, very much.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for making time.
I'm glad you're feeling a little better.
I'm getting there. And I will see you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Okay, I will quickly email Jen.
So, committee, one thing I want to ask before we move on to our next witness, are people able by Zoom to meet for a few hours on Monday afternoon?
I am.
I have a partial.
What's conflict?
I have a partial conflict. Kind of 3 to 4.
Is there a time on Monday? I'm flexible, so I'd like to get 3 hours on Zoom at some time during that day.
Maybe we could do 12 to 3 or in the morning.
It says he has to be gone too, so 11 to 2, is that a possibility?
I could go
I
from, I
can
could
make
go
11 to
for 3.
2 work.
I could go to 3.
12 to 3, bring your lunch from home. Scott will be here. to
That's the
set us
best
up.
time for me on Monday.
What's that?
That is the best time for me on Monday, is that middle of the day.
Whatever you can give us will be fine, but
Okay.
at least I want to be able to have a quorum, so.
I'm giving a talk at 1, but I could be there.
Say that again,
I'm giving a talk at 1
from 1 to how long will that
to
take?
2.
Is morning better for folks? Like 10 to 1? Could you do 10 to 1?
If you start at 10, I'll be late, but that's okay. I have a standing meeting with
Okay.
the speaker at 10, but I can come after.
Well, you could come back and join us if you took a bit of time off, or could you do all of the whole morning stretch?
Well, I'm asking, I'm trying to find,
Yeah.
I'm doing a
You're
doodle
saying on Zoom.
poll here, so
Yeah,
everybody has different things, but it sounds.
I could generally do 10 to 1 and might, if the vote's at 1:05, it's still hard for me because I'm.
No, no,
sure
it's fine.
talk at 1.
10 to 1 work? Okay, let's set that up for Monday, Scott. 10 to 1. Okay, thank you very much, Marie. So we have next Wendy Mays. I guess she's on Zoom, right? Yeah, I don't see Wendy here, so
Oh, she's outside.
it's a backdrop. She's in Ecuador.
She's in Miami.
Welcome, Wendy. Wendy's here to talk to us on behalf of the Broadcasters Association, I think, and you're interested in sports betting, if I'm correct? Okay.
That is correct. First, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, because I'm coming to you from the Philadelphia airport. So I just a few short hours ago was on the West Coast. So forgive me if I am not exactly my usual coherent self. But I really, so for the record, my name is Wendy Mays and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Broadcasters. And I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. This is so important to me that's why I was able to make this work, even though I'm en route home to Burlington. So I really want to thank your committee for prioritizing sports betting and taking it up this session. Vermont's commercial radio and television broadcasters are very encouraged that your committee is considering an amendment to H730 with the goal of implementing speed to market guidelines that would enable online sports wagering in Vermont. As I stated in a letter to this committee in February, all too often, broadcast journalists find themselves reporting on scams and illegal activity, with vulnerable Vermonters being the victims. And right now, Vermonters who want to bet on sports are driven to the illegal market, where they're not always guaranteed a winning bet will be paid. Giving consumers a legal alternative will not only protect them, but will generate millions of dollars in revenue for the state of Vermont. Creating a robust profit share model that does not increase the tax burden on Vermonters is important to the state's fiscal future. If the state is going to benefit from this newfound revenue stream, it's only fair to allow Vermont's businesses to also have the opportunity to benefit, especially if that newfound revenue stream is important to their fiscal future. That's why the Vermont's commercial broadcasters urge this committee not to add any limitations on the volume of advertising or promotion in which the potential sports wagering agents can invest. A free press, I think we can all agree this, a free press is an essential role in our democracy. But like it or not, advertising is what generates the income needed for a free press to exist. The unbiased and factual local news, along with weather, sports, entertainment, and other content Vermont's commercial television and radio stations provide is free. But it's not free to produce, nor is it in some cases even free to distribute. I bet you didn't know a radio station pays a fee every time someone streams their station online or with a smart speaker. Although a newsroom operates with complete autonomy by design, so that sales has no influence over what news stories air, like it or not, it is the income generated by advertising that pays news departments salaries, news gathering equipment, regulatory fees, licensing royalties, building maintenance, insurance, utilities, and so forth. The cost to operate a commercial television or radio station has been steadily increasing for over a decade, whereas the ability to generate local advertising revenue has been steadily decreasing. So we've got this situation going on. The majority of local television and radio advertising revenue comes from local retail businesses. Every time a local retail business closes, whether it's due to lack of workforce or not being able to compete with Amazon, Vermont stations lose another advertiser. Looking at all the empty storefronts on most towns of Main Street, you'll see how quickly the problem compounds. Locally owned businesses that are doing well and have marketing budgets are spending the majority of it on digital advertising. So the money is going to unregulated big tech companies like Google, Facebook, and YouTube, and the hundreds of other online platforms local stations now compete with for ad dollars. The harsh reality is that it is increasingly more difficult for commercial radio and television stations to continue operating. They do not and never will charge a subscription fee or ask your constituents to give personal information to listen to or watch their free over-the-air broadcast. But if stations are not able to find new streams of revenue, your constituents will slowly notice stations start to disappear as they're forced to go silent or dark. Based on activity in other states, the legalization of sports wagering in Vermont could be a salvation for commercial stations who were hit very hard by the cancellation of advertising throughout the pandemic and have still not fully recovered. Although there's no guarantee that potential sports betting agents will even choose to invest any portion of their advertising dollars in anything other than unregulated digital advertising, local television or radio marketing professionals who are your constituents and who work on commission should be given a fair opportunity to persuade them to do so without limitations or spending caps. Vermont's commercial broadcasters urge your committee to keep the provisions that calls for multiple agents that will compete for business. The broadcasters also encourage you to add a provision that advertising and promotion decisions remain in control of the agents. When radio and TV stations work directly with their clients, they're able to conduct a needs analysis and brainstorm creative tie-ins that will get them the best results. Finally, Vermont's commercial broadcasters also request that your committee recommend earmarking a portion of the Responsible Gaming Special Fund to be invested in television and radio messages placed by the Department of Mental Health. These messages should promote public awareness of and provide education about responsible gambling, as well as assistance programs available for problem gambling. Vermont's broadcasters are dedicated to the communities they serve, and they take that commitment seriously. The opportunity to generate income from a new stream is what will allow over-the-air commercial broadcasters to continue to provide fair, balanced, and factual news reporting that serves the public interest. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Wendy. One question I have, in other states, have there been limitations put on how much advertising could take place, or are you just focused on the choice of multiple operators, and you feel that having multiple operators will lead to competition, more revenue for the broadcast industry? Or are there other kinds of ways states have limited the amount of sales, advertising on broadcast?
Thank you for the question. The only state that I'm aware of that has limited advertising is New Hampshire. As your committee heard the testimony from the New Hampshire.
Have they limited advertising per se, or because they've only selected one operator, there's less need for that operator to advertise?
I'm pretty sure that the testimony that I heard, I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name, maybe one of you will remember it, from the New Hampshire Department of Lottery, I believe it was. He said that they limited it, which is where the broadcasters have a concern, that there was an actual limitation that was either written into the statute or it was something that their department decided to do. And that's what we have concerns about.
Well, I think, one of the things that we're trying to do is, may not be what you want to hear, but I think we want to go at this proposal, putting our toes in the water here and going somewhat conservatively as we approach this. So for instance, if I'm thinking that this committee were to do an age limitation, we might choose age 21 versus age 18, just as we get started in this area.
Oh yes, we totally support an age limitation. Absolutely.
I appreciate your testimony and good luck on your flight. Anybody has any questions going forward? Looks beautiful in Philadelphia.
Yes, it looks like it's a nice day.
We got some snow here today. It was kind of a bummer. So.
Ooh, oh boy. When I left where I was yesterday, it was 95 degrees. So.
Well, Vermonters would melt. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Just know that I'm available at any time if anybody has any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see the commissioner in the room.
No, I will.
She said she was going to be here.
I will.
Okay, well, let's go to Skylar.
Charles McIntyre.
Right on time. Boom.
There she is.
Oh, in person.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Skylar, we're gonna defer in favor of your boss. I hope that's okay with you. So.
I was waiting in the hall. I thought you still had sports betting going on.
Well, that's possibly part of the same thing.
Could you,
Yes.
would you mind, Commissioner,
Yes.
just giving us an overview of the various positions of the state on 730, just a concise statement? It's a long bill, but there's not that many issues in there.
Correct.
I don't want to get into
Correct.
I don't want to get into the minutia, but
Correct.
the issues that are in there. Review the issues that are in there and tell us your position, whether you're firmly in favor of it, support it,
Yes.
against it, and if there's anything else you want in the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Wendy Knight. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Normally, I've been saying Tourism and Marketing by mistake, but I got it right this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the bill. The way we see this, we being the administration and the department, we are fully in support of it. It's a bipartisan bill. It was introduced by a House Democrat, but it's definitely an administration bill. It has many of the legislative priorities of the administration in the bill. It's really an attempt to continue to modernize our liquor and lottery laws to keep pace with the industry evolution, innovation, and consumer preferences. It's a revenue neutral bill. It was passed 11-0 out of House Ways and Means. It's an economic development bill. This committee is very supportive. It has a lot of history in working on economic development. We actually see this as an economic recovery bill because it will help grow the industries and the sectors of the industry that suffered a lot during COVID. So it supports the Vermont distillers. They saw a drop in direct sales of 33% from FY20 to FY21. It supports the hospitality sector, the bars and restaurants, the wedding planners, the retailers, and Vermonters. Helps grow the economy by expanding the market for the low ABV RTDs and fortified wines into a much larger market. Our compliance data and the chief will share with you, there is no public safety issue with this bill. There's no public safety issue with moving fortified wines or low alcohol ABV, low ABV RTDs into the private sector. The committee knows already in the grocery stores and convenience stores and gas stations, there are already products, wine, beer, malt-based products, etc., that have similar or higher ABVs. And sports betting,
Let's
becomes part of this.
Let's hold off. on
okay, we'll
sports
talk about sports betting. And finally, I will say two final things. The consumers should be deciding what
Yes,
products.
that's fine. Hold on one
No
sec.
problem.
betting. I'm sorry, let's do my.
This means my apologies.
Yes.
That's
Shut
correct.
that off. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's okay. The consumers should be the ones that are deciding what's on the shelves, right? The consumer's choice is to decide what kind of products that the retailers and the wholesalers are selling. There's been a couple of additions and discussions. One is the special events. The department has looked at those provisions. Those are fine. The other is the cider. There was some work with the cider folks. We looked at that. We've been in regular contact with the cider folks since the summer. The department is fine with that. The craft brewers in Vermont will be just fine. This bill does not benefit them. I mean, does not harm them. It benefits the Vermont distillers, but not at the expense of the Vermont craft brewers. Years ago, the legislature passed bills that allowed the craft brewers to expand. As a result, we see the success that they have. Vermont has the third highest per capita consumption of beer. The Vermont craft brewers make exceptional beer. They're going to continue to make exceptional beer. This is not a bill that they should be opposed to. There is actually not unanimous opposition to this bill. And I think that you've heard from some of those brewers that are supportive of this.
No, I think we're going to. We have testimony that we have printed from many of them.
Yes, I'm aware that there are several brewers that have reached out to you that have a different view than the Vermont Brewers Association. Finally, we know that people don't get what they want because they don't specifically ask. Women don't get raises or promotions because they don't specifically ask. So I'm here to specifically ask each and every one of you to please vote yes for age 330. 730, whatever the liquor bill is that we're discussing today, age 730, I would very much appreciate your vote.
So two questions.
Yes.
One on the money. I know there's a fail-safe transfer from your department of revenue if there's a reduction in if there's a loss in revenue by moving ready to drink to the grocery stores. Is that just put in for a comfort level for the appropriators, or has anybody done
Yes.
any kind of analysis to show that you're fully comfortable that you're gonna?
Oh, yes, we've done an analysis of the department and we're fully confident in that figure.
Has joint fiscal done a similar analysis?
I think that joint fiscal did an analysis
We have
and
a joint fiscal
Yeah.
note on.
so the joint fiscal note shows that the bill is revenue neutral because we increased the direct to the general
that's
fund
just
by
that.
$1 million.
That's just a fail-safe. I
Right,
mean, any bill could be revenue neutral if you promise that they could.
sure, but the
Sources.
reason, To answer your question, we have done the analysis internally in the department. And so even with the increase in the direct app, we expect to see a 2.5 million surplus in FY23. So what happened historically is the direct app was larger than the 20%. So our direct app the last couple of years was around $23 million. So even going from to a $20 million direct app, we're fine. It's totally fine with the department. The one thing that I had stressed to House General and House Ways and Means, the way Joint Fiscal did it, the analysis was their job is just to take, okay, if we move RTDs into the private sector, what happens? What they failed to account, because they can't, but what we know is that that markup that is moving to the private sector, if it gets lost to the general fund from the RTDs, gets replaced by another product. We don't just leave the shelves empty. We don't leave the warehouse empty. If we're taking the low ABV RTDs to the private sector, we replace that with other product. That's our job, is to sell alcohol and to make money for the state. So we have a plan to bring in the higher ABV RTDs that are more premium tequilas, more premium mezcals, other categories that are growing as well. So there isn't $1 million void. It gets replaced by that markup in other categories.
The second question I had was, what is the department's position on, or what is the status of the law presently on distillers' abilities to sell out of state?
Yes, and I responded to Scott's email last night. And so right now, Vermont spirits manufacturers are allowed by statute to export their products out of state, as long as they're sending it to residents in states that allow direct-to-consumer shipping. Vermont distillers cannot ship directly to Vermonters in state, nor can out-of-state distillers ship directly to Vermonters in state.
So it's a reciprocity kind of thing. They can presently ship to a state that, like, let's say California, and using California as an example. They can ship to California, but California is allowed to ship to Vermont?
No,
Okay.
no. The only thing that Vermont distillers can do, technically by law, they have the ability to export. We consider exporting shipping directly to out-of-state customers, so long as that state allows out-of-state shipments.
Oh,
States
so they have to allow
determine.
it to come in, you're saying?
Yeah, you can't ship to a state, a Vermont distiller can't ship to a state that doesn't allow direct-to-consumer spirits. We don't allow direct-to-consumer spirits.
So what is your understanding of what they're asking for then?
Well, my understanding is that what happens now is if you are one of the spirit companies, you have to understand every single law, every single state that allows direct-to-consumer shipping, and you're using a fulfillment house. So you're not able to necessarily ship directly from your distiller with your own branding in your packaging. The other thing that's arising is the reciprocity issue. Some states are saying we will not allow other state spirits companies to send their product to our residents if that state does not allow the same. And so that's where you have the reciprocity issue.
Well, in that case, if the other state doesn't allow it, there's nothing we can do about it other than to allow that state to ship to us, right?
Yes, and I think what the distillers are looking for, and they can speak to this, they're looking for the magnitude. They want every single state to allow direct-to-consumer shipping so that there is reciprocity. So one of the things I can tell you what the department is doing, so we know that direct-to-consumer sales are happening illegally. We know of at least 15 e-commerce sites that are illegally shipping distilled spirits into Vermont.
Are we not, under the, I'm sorry, I'm slow on this.
It's okay.
Under Vermont law, we don't allow
We do-
technically spirits to come into the state.
Correct,
for
we
a
do not allow it.
Okay.
The only way you're supposed to be consuming and buying spirits in this state is through an 802 spirit store or a tasting room of a manufacturer. Farmer's market, right? That's it. You're not allowed to send spirits. You're allowed to send wine into Vermont, not spirits. What the department is doing is we are launching a direct-to-consumer shipping audit compliance report, a program. It's a pilot. It's not a study. We're getting a grant from the National, I forget the name, but it's a Association of Control States, and which we belong to. They're gonna give us a grant, and then we're gonna look at the direct-to-consumer shipping. Who are the companies that are illegally sending it in? What kind of products are they sending it in? Are the common carriers making sure they're checking ID, et cetera? So we're hoping to gain a lot more information on the direct-to-consumer shipping, and we can come to the legislature in January and present that information so that you all have more information, and frankly, we have more information to determine how or if we do direct-to-consumer shipping.
So, and Commissioner, that also is, when you find wrongdoing from outside of the state, you would then have to report that to the federal government, and TTB or whatever ATF has become the regulators at the federal level would be the ones still who could enforce on out-of-state suppliers that are shipping to the state.
What we're planning to do is do a partnership, just like we do with online vaping and tobacco products, with the AG's office. So we have a program in place where we do the work and then they collect the money or do a cease and desist. And so that's the kind of work that we're looking to do, so that the AG's office, much like they did in Michigan, can send out cease and desist letters to these out-of-state entities and perhaps have a settlement, much like they're doing with vaping.
Can I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
And if they, so, I mean, likely if they are shipping illegally into the state, I could be wrong, but they probably aren't remitting taxes, or they're.
That's the other question.
Yeah.
And we've been talking with the tax department that potentially this could be a partner with the tax department, because if they're collecting taxes, what kind of taxes are they collecting? Is it just sales tax? Are they collecting excise tax? And who are they remitting that to?
Right.
So bottom line is what the distillers, some of them may be asking for, is for Vermont to allow out-of-state companies to ship here so they can benefit from the reciprocity, so they could send to those other states. And you're not, your position is you're against that right now.
No, we don't have a position of being against that. Our suggestion is that we do a compliance study. So the way compliance, not a study, a
Audit.
pilot, an audit, thank you. No studies, no more studies. So
Actually, studies are.
We don't need commentary.
There is a place for studies in a part-time legislature that does not have the time.
Of course,
to
I
do all
totally
the
get
work
that.
That is required.
What we do in the department is we actually want to do pilot programs. So we don't study things, we just try to get pilot programs. I totally agree that there's room for a study of some things, like we did on sports betting last year. So we would rather gather some information. Okay, we would rather gather some information on the direct-to-consumer shipping. Again, we have a control state model right now. That means that you have to go through the 802 spirit stores. Now, we've had a conversation whether or not that makes sense for Vermont, okay? Another conversation to be had. But given that that's the structure, then the direct-to-consumer shipping, allowing spirits to come into the state, completely bypasses that. So what I've said to House General is there are a number of considerations that we need to think about if we're going to go down that path of passing that kind of legislation.
Okay, so you're not against it, but you
It's
say
a
it's
preference.
worthy of a pilot before you form.
Correct. We would rather do the pilot program of the compliance audit and then work with the legislature to gather more information and understand, okay, if you're bypassing the 802 spirit store, how do you compensate them, right? Like, what kind of products do you let in? So there's a whole range of questions I think that we need to explore.
Okay. And
May I
so,
ask you a question?
yes, go ahead, sorry.
Just to clarify something you said a few minutes ago regarding federal involvement, there's no violation of federal law in terms of shipping to a state that doesn't allow it, is it?
Not to my knowledge, and Skylar can answer that directly. States determine what alcohol
Right,
can
yeah,
be shipped into their
And
states.
so your recourse is through state law, it has nothing to do with anything in terms of federal law.
Skylar, can you confirm that?
Go ahead, Scott.
I can. Good morning, members of the committee. So there is federal legislation that talks about violations of this interstate shipping. It's all civil violations, so it would be civil injunctive relief that would be the remedy for those violations. They aren't. It's not a violation of criminals, criminal statutes, federal criminal statutes, but there would be civil injunctive reliefs that the states could seek under federal law.
So Commissioner, you have no problem with the concerns of the cider folks?
Correct, the cider
their
changes are
proposals.
fine.
The request to be taxed as beer, basically.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about the taxation issue is perhaps that's an issue that we just discuss next year. I mean, we're at the end of the legislative session. I don't know how much time you have to put it over to Senate Finance. My suggestion would be that we agree to the Senate, agree in this committee, and we agree that the cider definitions and other provisions make sense. But I wouldn't advocate that we get into the taxation issue at this point.
Well, that's a key piece of the bill.
All right, well,
Yeah, I'm just-
we have no problem with it. That's fine. I am just,
Is there a major revenue?
no, and
implication?
I've spoken to the tax department. There is not a major decline in the revenue. I'm just interested in having H730 pass this year. So I don't want anything that impedes that ability for that to happen. We have no problem with the taxation issue. I've talked to the tax department.
And the other was permitting,
The special event permits?
Yes.
was that just applicable to cider or was that?
No, it's for all of the manufacturers. It's for the special event permits, and John McCain can talk about that. We've talked with John, and we've talked with a lot of the manufacturers. We have no issue with the changes proposed in the special event language.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the gist of that last answer.
So
You're
the
you're
department,
okay with the changes? that
yes,
they're
we are.
suggesting?
Yes, we are.
They're wrong.
So I have an amendment to H730 that allows a direct-to-consumer spirit shipping license. I can understand wanting to study it and pilot it. I think it's best done with our local spirits manufacturers being able to start to ship to people in the state who want to help them grow and be able to study this with them kind of at the table. Or pilot it with, local folks being able to ship. I worry that every year that goes by, we're allowing a lot of under the table illegal activity that doesn't bring in tax revenue, that is unregulated, to happen. And I'd like to see us give, especially coming out of a pandemic and recession, our local manufacturers and rectifiers the opportunity to more fully participate, especially because there's such an emphasis on buying local right now, and people wanting to support their local spirits manufacturers. So I have that, and Commissioner, you may have heard that yesterday, Senator Westman came in wanting us to look again at defining cider. And I have included his language from, I think, 216, S216.
We already have that language in the bill.
Oh, okay.
We
I
can
thought
just
it needed,
incorporate the bill.
So let me just say, your amendment would allow for direct shipping from Vermont distillers to Vermonters only?
if we could do that instead, if we're worried about, I don't know, like out of state folks now shipping to Vermonters and bypassing our spirits folks, it could be rewritten to do that. What it does is allow anyone to legally have spirits shipped to them. So that helps both Vermont spirits manufacturers. I didn't know you could just sort of say, this just allows Vermont spirits companies to benefit, but I'd be very open to doing that.
So I'd be open to considering direct to Vermont consumers. I think given that the department is doing this compliance audit, I would like to wait and to do any other direct to consumer work until we have that report.
So that it is direct to Vermont consumers. That's what this bill is.
I thought you said it was.
Is there any legal problem to just allow
Yes, there is.
to spend just the Vermonters?
Yes.
So then,
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah.
so then maybe this is a year premature and that we wait and.
It-
for the department
it
to-
is. Yes, thank you. You cannot allow Vermont manufacturers to do what you don't allow out-of-state manufacturers to do. So if you allow Vermont distillers to ship directly to Vermonters, then you need to allow out-of-state distillers to ship to Vermonters. So I totally understand, Senator, the need to support the Vermont distillers by allowing them better access to their customers that they didn't have for the last 2 years. We very much would like to work with the legislature on finding a path for that and using this pilot program as a way to understand and then to really have discussions about what we can do and what we can't do and how to support the Vermont distillers without running up against the Supreme Court case that doesn't allow that, right? And how to make sure that we're not supporting our Vermont distillers at the expense of the 802 spirit stores, et cetera. Given the constructs of the 802 spirit stores in our control state, how do we make that happen? And I do think there's a way to do that, but I would respectfully ask if we could have this discussion next year about the direct-to-consumer ship after we have the pilot program.
Can you tell me more about how the pilot would help us understand, like, will help, I mean, how do you pilot direct to consumer?
It's not a pilot of a direct-to-consumer
Uh-huh.
shipping, it's a pilot audit compliance program. We have no ability right now to do any sort of audit or compliance work with the direct-to-consumer shipping, the products that are coming in.
Mhm.
So there's two pieces of it. The audit compliance pilot is looking at all of the legal activity that's coming in and quantifying that and understanding the types of products so that we can better define a piece of legislation that aims to support the Vermont distillers and understands what kinds of products are coming in. So there's two pieces, what comes in and what goes out,
Did you say monitoring all the illegal activity?
right? And then also the legal activity. We have wine that's legally
Mhm.
coming in, direct consumer shipping wine, so let's look at that. Are those things in place that we asked to be done, are they being done?
So right now with any shipping of wine, for example, into consumers in the state, there's no auditing, there's no compliance.
Correct, we have bricks and mortar compliance, we have the capacity to do bricks and mortar compliance. So this pilot program will also give us an idea of how to structure an audit / compliance program for all of that shipping.
Okay. Is there anything you feel we could do this year to expedite building in that ability to do direct to consumer next year rather than just come back with then probably something that might take another year?
I don't think there's anything in legislation right now that we can do. I think that we can continue to have discussions, and I think the results of that pilot compliance audit will be very helpful.
What's the timeline for that one?
We'll have a 6-month report to the legislature in January, and then we'll have the final result in a year, so June.
Okay, we're not going to deal with sports betting today, but I do want to give you an opportunity. If you're about to say something, if there's anything new you had on that you wanted to add from the previous testimony. I think you have some support from this committee for that, but we'll see.
Yeah, and
We have-
given,
we have
I'm
two more-
afraid
I think we have 2 more witnesses before 10.
I think the committee knows that the administration is very supportive of sports betting. We've had many discussions about this. We are very much in support of having the sports betting language that Tucker and I drafted put into H730 and to be respectful of your other people that are here to testify. I wouldn't,
Okay.
I wouldn't take up much
That's
more
right.
time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please stick around if
I
you
will.
can.
Absolutely.
Can we hear from John McCann?
Yes.
Good morning, Senators.
Good morning. Have we heard from you before?
I was in here during the last 7:30 and got to raise my hand for a quick announcement, but I have been blowing up your phones. Okay, so I apologize for that, but I've been working on this fix for almost a year now.
Okay.
And it looks like I finally caught the ear.
We've got that.
Great, so everybody has the change
I think
to
so.
7:30 that I put together.
I do,
Okay, here's a copy for you.
thank you, and happily, you haven't been blowing up my phone, but we have.
And did you?
Thank you.
Yes.
Is this online at this point?
This is just for Scott. I did talk to,
Yeah, you another
Tucker.
copy, or I gave mine.
Yes.
We can share.
That's all right, I have plenty.
Thanks.
I did talk to Tucker Anderson, and he said that he couldn't make any changes without one of your permission.
Right.
Okay, so anyhow,
Special events.
yes, for the record, my name's John McCann. I own North Branch Vineyards here in Montpelier, Vermont. I'm also the legislative chair for the Vermont Grape and Wine Council, so I'm here on behalf of the Vermont Grape and Wine Council. I'm gonna pass this out as well, just so you can kind of see. This was the special event permit prior to last year's inadvertent change. If you see the section, one second, I need to put my glasses on, I apologize. There's the section 2 there that says removed in the circle.
Yep.
I'll read that to you. It says, each manufacturer or rectifier planning to attend a single special event pursuant to this section may be listed on a single permit for the special event. However, each attendance at a special event shall count towards the manufacturer's or rectifier's annual limit of 104 special event permits. So let me explain that to you. So in the past, I have been a sponsor for many special event permits throughout the state. One being the Vermont Wine and Harvest Festival in Mount Snow. What that means was that I could pay the Department of Liquor Control $35 for a special event permit, and I could list as many alcohol vendors on that permit as was going to attend that event. Instead of having each person send in a special event permit, which inadvertently bogs down the Department of Liquor Control because now they have 20 instead of 1. But they do gain some revenue out of having this broken out. So my understanding was that by removing this section, the Department of Liquor Control looked at that verbiage as that more than one alcohol vendor couldn't commingle at one special event. However, if you look at the section above that, which was not removed, which is B1, a special event permit holder may sell alcoholic beverages manufactured or rectified by the permit holder by the glass or the unopened bottle. So there was some confusion in this language. So all I'm trying to do is clarify the language so there's no more confusion. There were a couple events that I almost got turned down from last year, which some of these events produce about $5,000 in revenue in a weekend for myself and for the other participants who were there. This
And
bill,
for my county.
yes, and for your county. And I do know that we do have the Chamber of Commerce online here as well. And we've been working together diligently to try to fix this. But this change will not just fix it for the wineries, but it also fixes it for the breweries and also fixes it for distillers. So it works for all of the Vermont manufacturers. And if you look at the change that I put together, so again, this is not officially in H30. I just kind of broke it out and redid it so you guys could see it. It's simply 5 lines, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. And all that does is really clarify in 15 line 15 is the most significant. By the glass within the event boundaries. So now what it means is that doesn't matter how many alcoholic vendors are there. A consumer from one manufacturer and a consumer from another manufacturer can each have a glass and meet on the dance floor. When we removed it, we couldn't do that no longer. So this is just making sure that the freedom of every alcohol vendor who is at a special event can have the same option of serving their customer a glass of wine, a glass of beer, or a mixed drink.
And Commissioner, you signed off on this.
Yes, we did.
And you've looked at this language change, the specific language?
Yes, we have, the department has.
Okay, any questions on the permitting issue?
I just like Tucker to weigh in. It's,
Tucker draft.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
so.
Tucker did not.
So Tucker did not draft this. He did draft an earlier version, which did not get to you all because he actually removed a section of the special event, which actually removed the limits of how much alcohol could be served to the consumer. And as I spoke to Commissioner Knight, I didn't believe that we should remove that section. And she agreed. It helps us manufacturers when we're at an event, when somebody comes up and says, oh, I need another drink. And we know that they've had their limits. It gives us the legal way of saying, we can't serve you anymore. So we would love to keep that section in. So the draft that Tucker did earlier that you did not receive, we are going to discard. And I'm going to ask you, Senate, if you wouldn't mind having Tucker redraft this section to include this highlighted section.
A typo, I believe, on
Oh.
line 23 of page 2.
In the whole bill?
No, the.
Well, that's my apologies. That was just me. So this is me trying to cut and paste and reword. So
Yeah, just the word no should be deleted on line 23.
thank you.
Okay.
So the one thing I do ask is actually two things. I am also in support of putting fortified wines in on the store shelves of a retail store other than the 802 Spirit stores. That is something that the Vermont Liquor Wine Council would love to see. Eventually, we are going to be making fortified wines under North Bench Vineyards, and it would be nice to just put it into a supermarket rather than have it just go directly through the 802 store.
How do you, I find the fortified wine thing a little confusing. How do you justify their alcohol content moving from liquor stores to grocery stores?
Well, so because it is a first of all, it's manufactured by a Vermonter, right? Because we're a Vermont manufacturer. And my understanding is there's a legal limit of alcohol that's being proposed in 730.
Right, but that we haven't agreed to
16
yet.
to
I mean,
23
this is
or-
a big discussion.
Yes.
Is sloughing off a whole section of DLL to, I mean, there are two asks here,
Mhm.
ready to drink beverages, which some of us have more challenges with than others, and for different reasons. And the other is sloughing off fortified wines so it is a higher alcohol content.
It
And
is a higher alcohol.
not currently available. And so some of us have a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
We take it.
Are you asking me to
I do
answer
support it.
or Mr.?
No, it's okay. It's a part of our discussion that we have to have.
Only because that, as a Vermont manufacturer, that's going to elevate my product. It's going to give me another opportunity to make something that the consumers want.
But
Right.
that's not limited to just Vermont manufacturers.
Right.
All fortified wines would now go to the grocery store.
Yes, just like this direction.
Right, and at a certain point, the shelving's gonna run out and we won't be able to get meat at the grocery store.
Oh, come
So,
on.
the question I have for you though
Yes.
is why not put that money into marketing and improving our 802 stores? Why not drive more business to our 802 stores and sell more of your product at
Well, so there's a
a
limited,
specialty store?
there are a limited amount of 802 stores in the state of Vermont.
Well, there are a limited amount of every store.
There are over 1,200 retailers that I can directly sell my wine to. There are how many 802 stores in the state of Vermont?
79, 80.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
So it's a huge difference. There's more ability for me to make more money putting it on a retail shelf other than an 802 store. That doesn't mean I still won't put it on an 802 store shelf.
My guess is it's already on an 802 shelf.
Well, I don't currently make a
You don't make
fortified
fortified.
wine. Right. Before I make one, I wanted to make sure everything was taken care of before we invest in that product and then have it on an 802 shelf, competing with non-Vermont.
Well, it would be in the grocery store also, John.
It would be if 730 is passed because of the alcohol
It
limit.
all, yeah, and that's the challenge, is that's a lot of product. That is a lot of product displacing other stuff. It's a lot of product in the can section, and it's a lot of product in the wine section.
Well, I do have to say that a retailer does not have to take my product.
This is true.
So that is up to the retailer of what they want on their shelves, what their customers are asking for on their
But
shelves.
it is a pub.
What is the common range of alcohol content in the wine?
What is, so right now, our highest range in wine is 14%.
And it goes from what's the low?
Well, you can have it as low as, I think, 7%.
And what are
Before-
what's the
before-
alcohol content
22 or
of 4 to 5 wines?
Well, so it's anything over 14%.
But
14 to
Okay.
20 is kind of where a port, which is what I want to create as a port. Anything higher than 20, it gets to become too alcoholic, too hot. So the consumer is not going to enjoy it as much.
well,
So in your opinion, a fortified wine would be more like a wine than a spirit in terms of alcohol?
It is the majority of a grape wine. So we start with the fermentation process of fruit.
Right.
It is fermented to an alcohol level of 14%.
Right.
To take it to the next level, to say 18%, you're only putting a fraction of a distilled product into that barrel to increase it from a 14% to an 18%.
Okay.
So you can see the majority of that product is grown and produced right here in the state of Vermont.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, we really need
we
to
have
hear
Yes.
more
from
witness.
from
We have-
Alan in 5 minutes.
Okay, the only other
We
quick
have
thing that I want to say is that
I don't know.
He's not here?
He's right here.
Skylar is,
That's right, yeah, okay.
the only thing I would like to say is if we would love to see this verbiage approved upon passage, not wait until July. Okay, thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Alan, come on up. People want to, people need to leave.
I do need to
especially
go,
about
unfortunately.
them. Feel free.
I'm not just here to talk about shelf space, so if you want to put, I'm happy to come back Monday. I got a lot to talk about if we have a moment.
And we have a lot of testimony to pass out.
Just
So
give us a brief overview, and if we.
I'd be happy
have
to
you
come back.
on tomorrow or Monday.
Very good, thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I will try to speak quickly, but also get my point across.
Okay.
My name is Alan
Yes.
Hernandez. I am co-owner of Law Station Brewing in Morrisville, Vermont. I'm also the chair of the Vermont Legislative and Government Affairs Committee. So I speak on behalf of the Vermont Brewers Association. I speak on behalf of myself as a business owner. And as I move forward into understanding H730 and specifically the RTP component of it, I feel like I'm also here as a taxpayer to represent the state of Vermont, because I look here and I see the massive amount of potential revenue loss that can occur by moving the largest growth segment in the alcohol industry right now, which is RTDs, and privatizing it. And I still can't understand why we have, the state of Vermont has an amazing opportunity post-prohibition. We control the sale of alcohol. We benefit all the profit from that. Why would we, with nothing, there's no other profit margin around that's like what we have on alcohol. So we all know the benefits of what that does to the general fund. So I can't comprehend why we would take a product that is has a huge growth opportunity and privatize. That's one thing. And I don't believe that by taking, bringing in more bottles of mezcal will offset the revenue loss of moving this product to every grocery store shelf and every gas station. Now, as a brewer, we have brewers within our organization that are for this. I'm in support of them. I think there's great opportunity, but I think that this is moving too fast. Just as we're all talking about pausing on certain things that you were speaking about earlier this morning, this is one that's moving so quickly that if we had one more year to do a little bit more research, a little bit more study, I think it could be greatly beneficial to really see all the impacts, potential impacts. Do you have any questions for me as we're running out of time before I keep going?
Well, I guess the question I would have from your testimony so far is, do we really need a study, or could one side or the other say, based on experience in other states, there doesn't necessarily need to be a loss of revenue? If that's what the commissioner is saying, she's convinced, she's done her analysis, and she doesn't think she's going to lose revenue. And you're saying that that's, you can't believe that's true. And so you're saying, let's go check it out and study it.
I believe
Is there evidence already one way or another?
just on the raw numbers that we've been able to run, we haven't had transparency into the exact dollar that the Department of Liquor and Lottery is paying per case versus their markup. But I do have testimony where that I have submitted that explains it's roughly a 65% markup, and they're paying NATO 2 stores back only 8% on that. So that's all clearly out. I don't want to bog down with Matt, but the profit margin and price structure that is currently in place, I can't understand why we would give anything away. And
Is it more complicated than, and maybe I just need to look at this again, is it more complicated than the volume of sales of the mezcal versus the ready to drink?
I believe it is.
Yes.
Sir. Yes.
There's a tax rate as well.
Absolutely. And there's a tax component that's involved in this, so streamlining it within beer. And these are, I've seen all the testimony, and it's very, it is very representative to have all these cans on the table, and this is one, this is one, this is one. But the biggest difference with those cans is for the vintners, it takes them months to make wine. For the brewers, it takes me 3 to 8 weeks to produce beer from grain to glass. For the spirits, there are some distillers in the state that are actually distilling their products. There are other distillers in the state that are buying 200-gallon totes, big plastic tubs of neutral spirits, diluting it, putting some fruit in it, boom, you have a product. So on the tax rate side, we are talking about different products. Even though they do have alcohol, the same alcohol percentage, they are grossly different products.
Okay. So,
So I could be mistaken, but you're already competing with like hard seltzers and
Yes.
other very low fruit, low actual like flavor content products that are not beer and wine, that are very cheap to make. And what we looked at yesterday, to me, felt like it competed more with like a hard seltzer and has a lot of other local fruits and products, and it creates jobs locally. So I think as a consumer, to me, it's starting to become obvious that seltzers are taking over a lot of shelf space, and that this would be competing more with those.
I honestly, I am not concerned with shelf space. I think that it's a free market and new things are going to come and go.
Yeah.
But what is important to know is that alcohol consumption post-prohibition has basically gone steady line with population. So we're not going to gain a whole new consumer segment out of this.
so we're going to have to go upstairs. But your main concern is revenue loss to the state?
Revenue loss to state, and I will ask this product really very quickly, distribution rights. So currently the state of Vermont is the distributor of these products.
Right.
So there's a value to the right to distribute that product. So Smirnoff, multinational global company. Many Vermont wholesalers are going to want those Smirnoff products. Who is the arbitrator that decides who gets that product? Which wholesaler? And is there a valuation? Is there compensation that happens?
So are you also not concerned with the competition that these ready to drink would have with beer?
It is what it is.
It's on the grocery shelf, it's going to be a lot more
Of course,
competitive.
of course.
So we're not giving proper
No.
time.
Yeah.
We will have.
There's a lot.
Let's give the time to understand it.
Yeah.
We're giving up $7.33 in revenue per 4-pack. And
Yes.
I want to know.
I'm sorry for the.
That's okay. Please, I'm available on
Give me
Monday.
the
Thank you
facts
so
so we
much.
can actually understand.